Hi, you guys. So we are trying to get through Omnivore's Dilemma, and you've read chapter one, I hope. And chapter one talks about how corn took over America. And then it ends with this passage that uh, if corn is the star of this story, is it the hero or the bad guy? Before I could decide, I needed to get to know it better. And so I went to see it where it lives, in the vast cornfields of the Midwest. Okay, and then it sends you to chapter two. So chapter two gets you to the Midwest, and there's a lot of information in there. So I just wanted to boil it down to you for you to make it as simple as possible. This is sort of a preview to the chapter. Okay, so it focuses in, or Michael Pollan focuses in on George Naylor. He's a family farmer. His family has owned that farm since 1919, so it's almost 100 years, right? It's in Iowa, and back in the day, his family grew a variety of crops, enough to feed 12 others. The soil is really great soil because I guess when a glacier retreats, it leaves a lot of minerals and nutrition from whatever stuff has accumulated in the glacier. It leaves it behind, and so whatever millions of years ago the glacier retreated, it left wonderful soil in Iowa. So it's called black gold, this soil. It's so great. It's on page 21. Okay, but now things have really changed. It's no longer a family farm growing enough to feed 12 other people. Instead, it's only corn and soybeans on this farm, and they take turns in the field. 1 year of corn, 1 year of soybeans, like that. And now he can feed up to 140 other people. Okay, so when you're reading nonfiction, we always want you to take a second to give your thoughts. What do you think of that? I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, what are the pros of that and what are the cons of that? So those are the kinds of things we're going to be discussing, because I don't think it's a hard and fast answer. I think there's a sort of a spectrum of answers. And so we want you to practice thinking about it, talking about it, arguing about it, sussing it out. Sussing it out means sort of trying to decide how you feel by discussing it. Okay, so the next page. Okay, other things in this chapter is that he goes over hybrid corn and GMO corn. Hybrid corn is on pages 23 and 24 and 25. With hybrid corn, which is let's see, it's basically a combo of two different corn seeds, I guess, picking the best result of one, the best result of other, putting them together, creating a hybrid seed. That resulted in quadrupled, 4 times the yield of corn. That's a good result. However, with hybrid corn, the second generation of corn, like the seeds from the result, it doesn't produce the same result. So you have to purchase seeds every year for hybrid corn. That makes it harder on the farmers. They can't just keep their seeds. They have to buy new seeds every year. Okay, and then GMO corn is created in a laboratory, and it's adding genes to corn DNA for qualities like strength, size, resistance to virus, being able to grow in a smaller space, all that stuff that makes a corn kernel as a seed produce a much bigger, better result. Okay, but again, seeds need to be purchased each year. You can't actually work with the results that you get. You have to, it's a created, actually this one, I believe, you have to purchase it because it's the intellectual property of the company that created that new GMO corn. So it would be sort of like stealing if you just took the results each year. You actually have to purchase that again. So there's, in both cases with both hybrid and GMO, there's positives and negatives. What are your thoughts about that? So that's good for discussion. Okay, now, whenever you're reading nonfiction, it's called nonfiction because it's supposed to be the truth. But it's impossible for a writer to eliminate all bias. Or, I mean, maybe it isn't. What do you think of that? But can a writer eliminate all bias? To see where the bias is, bias meaning like prejudice or preformed feelings. To discover where the bias is, listen. There's a couple things you can do. One is listen for the tone in the words. And by tone, it means the tone of voice in the words. So here we get this first part from page 4. It says, I set out to try to solve the modern omnivore's dilemma. I decided to become a food detective to find out where our food comes from and what exactly it is we are eating. My detective work became the book you now hold in your hands. So he's saying he started with no specific bias, he just wanted to find out. So if I were to judge that for tone, I would say that's a very reasonable, believable tone. I trust this guy. That's how I would interpret that. Do you agree, or do you see any shades of doubt on that? Then you get a little further along, and on page 10, he starts talking about what he finds in the supermarket, and he says, it's all corn, with a capital A, a capital C, and bold letters. So he gives you that statement, and then he comes back at you the next paragraph. Well, maybe not all corn, but there's still an awful lot of it hiding here, a lot more than you'd suspect. So I'm like, okay, well, this one seems a little bit exaggerated. Why is he exaggerating that? Right? And then he corrects it, but he still, I mean, if he were really to correct it, wouldn't he erase that and say it's mostly corn or there's a lot of corn? Instead, he wants to make the point to shock us, like, whoa, there's corn everywhere, right? And then so he lets that stand as its own bold-faced sentence with caps, and then he corrects it a little bit. Okay, so let's discuss that too. I mean, what do you make of that? Is that fair? Is that showing his bias, that he wants us to be shocked into really like rethinking things? What's he doing with that? Okay, and then another thing you can do besides listen for tone of voice, is look at diction. And diction means word choice, right? On page 25, he has a sidebar called Franken Seeds 25. Let me pull that up. Do you see that? Franken Seeds. So Frankenstein was a monster. So what's the tone of a choice like Franken Seeds, right? Isn't there a tone of voice on that? I mean, he's talking about GMO seeds. What if he meant, if he's actually talking about GMO seeds, Franken Seeds seems to give it a negative feel, a negative spin, a negative connotation. What if he had written miracle seeds? Because these are seeds that can grow in hard places under difficult condition, produce better fruits, better crops, you know. Maybe the opposite of Franken Seeds would have been miracle seeds, right? So in that, you can see a little bias, can't you? So Michael Pollan is, you know, what you can decide, is he trustworthy or not? To a certain degree, he's trustworthy because he's being a detective. But on the other hand, he does want to make his point when he uses a word like Franken Seeds. Yeah, you can see that. So we think it's important that you always look at tone and diction and try to just deduce what is the bias of the writer too, because we're not trying to shove something down your throat like this is God's word to us about food. It's not. It's one man's book, and where's his bias, and then let's judge it for what we think, right? Can we still trust him? You have to decide that. Okay. I wanted you to also have this opportunity, if you want, with a word like Franken Seeds, we could apply it to our own Hawaii agriculture. UH has created a GMO papaya seed that prevents this very damaging virus called ring spot virus. That virus significantly reduces how much a tree can produce, but now we have a seed, a GMO papaya seed, that prevents ring spot virus. So now 3/4 of our local papayas are GMO, and they are resistant to that disease. So what are the pros and cons of that? And here's a place where you can look at that. I tried to click on it, it didn't really work, but I have it here for you. Hold on right there. Whoops, not that. Okay, so you can look it up, GMO Compass, and about papayas. Papayas are grown. I mean, you can look at that on your own. I just think it's really interesting that in Hawaii, a GMO has really solved the problem of papaya trees running into trouble, right? So anyway, that's helping you to suss out the bias. All right. Other things in this chapter that are I'm just trying to sum it down for you to the most core things. Pollen says that with these hybrids and GMOs, more corn can be grown, but that also equals less of other crops. If you're growing more corn, you're growing less tomatoes, lettuce, whatever else, right? Okay, because more corn can be grown, like in a small amount of space, more people want to grow corn because there's a great seed for it and you can grow a lot of it, right? But then there's also, because there's more corn, now corn is much cheaper. So you're going to make less money off of the corn you grow. Okay, so cheaper corn equals less money for farmers, right? And then more corn, here's a good one, I guess. It's cheaper to feed animals, but you're feeding them corn rather than what they usually used to eat in the past, which was hay and grass. If you think about it, animals aren't going to be eating corn normally. They would be eating hay and grass. And so now we've changed what animals eat, okay? And then if there's more of a single crop, you need fewer workers. So that means fewer people in the area, less population in each town, right? Fewer workers equals fewer people living in the area equals towns are shrinking and fading. Okay, so these are some of the ideas he brings up in chapter 2. And then, you know, there's a lot to talk about the positives and negatives. So I hope you have really good classroom discussion on this because there's tons of interesting stuff to discuss. This is our world, you guys. This is important stuff. Let's talk about it. Okay, so get psyched, participate in class, and throw your ideas out there. All right, thanks. Good luck.